What if I told you the Israel-Palestine conflict isn't just about borders or politics? It's about stories etched into the very soul of humanity, stories of promises, betrayals, and beliefs that have shaped the course of history. For centuries, this struggle has captured the world's attention, stirring emotions and debates. But here's the twist: understanding this conflict goes far beyond what's in the headlines. It dives deep into ancient prophecies and sacred texts that many of us overlook. Curious? You should be. Now, let's shatter a common belief. Some say the conflict is a modern issue, born out of 20th century politics. But nothing could be further from the truth. The roots of this tension stretch back thousands of years, tied to the spiritual lineage of two brothers, Isaac and Ishmael. What's more, this isn't just history, it's prophecy. For millions, the events unfolding in Israel and Palestine feel like chapters of a divine playbook. And here's the kicker: whether or not you believe in these prophecies, they've shaped the world we live in today. So, why should you care? Because this isn't just their story, it's ours too. The Israel-Palestine conflict impacts global politics, influences how billions perceive faith, and raises questions about justice, destiny, and reconciliation. By the time you finish this video, you'll not only understand the ancient roots of their struggle but also see how it connects to our world, and maybe even to your own life. Ready to uncover the truths that most people never dare to explore? The Israel-Palestine conflict can trace its tangled beginnings to ancient biblical narratives. According to the scriptures, Abraham, a patriarch revered by both Jews and Muslims, fathered two sons, Isaac and Ishmael. Isaac's descendants, the Jews, were promised the land of Canaan, while Ishmael's lineage is linked to the Arabs. This foundational story shapes the historical claims of both groups to the same land. Imagine growing up with a family heirloom that two siblings are equally attached to. That's the level of emotional weight this land holds. It's not just soil, it's identity, history, and divine legacy. Throughout history, the region of Canaan became a melting pot of civilizations, each leaving its mark. Jews regard it as the Promised Land, a divine gift mentioned in their sacred texts. Arabs, meanwhile, see their connection as equally deep, tied to their ancestral heritage. This isn't just history, it's the cornerstone of their cultural DNA. How does one reconcile two histories that run parallel but never intersect? This fundamental question haunts the roots of this conflict. Religious significance only adds more layers to the complexity. For Jews, the area encompasses places like Jerusalem, home to the Temple Mount, their holiest site. Muslims revere the same city, calling it Al-Quds, where the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque stand as symbols of Islamic devotion. Picture two friends vying for the same treasured artifact, each with heartfelt reasons, except this isn't just a keepsake, it's a symbol of eternal faith. Even the geography tells a story of division. The Jordan River, which flows serenely through the land, ironically acts as a dividing line. The lands on either side, whether Judea, Samaria, or the broader Levant, hold stories of conquest, exile, and return. The significance of these places transcends the material; they're the settings of sacred tales that guide the spiritual compass of millions. With such deep roots, the conflict seems less like a political dispute and more like a centuries-old family feud, replete with unhealed wounds and simmering resentments. And just when one might think it's merely about land, the conversation opens to divine prophecies and promises, a segue into the next layer of this intricate narrative. Biblical prophecies have fueled the flames of the Israel-Palestine conflict for centuries, with both Jews and Arabs finding meaning in ancient texts. In Genesis, God's covenant with Abraham speaks of a promised land for his descendants, a divine pledge tied to Isaac and Ishmael. This wasn't just a poetic verse, it shaped the worldview of two peoples, each seeing themselves as the chosen heirs. Imagine holding a deed that claims your right to a treasure, only to find someone else waving a similar one. Ezekiel's visions only deepened the narrative, painting a vivid picture of Israel's restoration and the land's sacred significance. For many Jews, these prophecies represent unshakable hope and validation, a script written in the heavens. Meanwhile, Arabs often see divine alignment in their connection to Ishmael, whose descendants populate much of the region. It's like two paths converging on the same destination, yet neither willing to step aside. These promises weren't just spiritual, they became political. As generations passed, leaders, theologians, and everyday people cited these texts as the cornerstone of their claims. Think of how debates in modern times frequently reference ancient words to justify actions. It's as if the Bible itself became a courtroom, with opposing sides making their case to an unseen judge. But what do these prophecies mean for someone today? For believers, they aren't dusty relics, they're living words, shaping decisions and identities. Whether you find inspiration in these texts or simply observe their impact, it's impossible to deny their power. It's like reading a map with no clear route, just promises of a destination if you hold on to faith. As history progressed, these spiritual claims transformed into tangible disputes. The establishment of modern Israel in 1948 brought these ancient promises into a new era, making the conflict not just about prophecy but survival. That's where the story takes a dramatic turn. The establishment of Israel in 1948 marked a turning point in history, a moment when ancient prophecies collided with modern realities. For Jews around the world, this was the fulfillment of a millennia-long dream, a homeland, a sanctuary, a return to Zion. But for Palestinians, it was something entirely different, Nakba, the catastrophe. Imagine a family welcoming a long-lost sibling home, only to find their rooms taken and their belongings displaced. That's the emotional complexity of this event. The creation of Israel wasn't just a political move, it was deeply personal. Survivors of the Holocaust found a beacon of hope in this new nation, while Palestinians saw their villages, homes, and lives uprooted. It's like watching a pendulum swing between triumph and tragedy, depending on which side of the story you stand. The scars of this moment still shape identities, from Tel Aviv to Gaza. Internationally, the world played its part. The United Nations' decision to partition the land into Jewish and Arab states sounded like a compromise on paper, but on the ground, it ignited chaos. Both sides believed they had a rightful claim, leading to wars, displacement, and decades of animosity. Think of it as a contract that promised peace but delivered conflict, leaving both parties in a perpetual state of dissatisfaction. For Palestinians, the loss wasn't just territorial, it was existential. Refugees spread across neighboring countries, their stories of exile passed down like family heirlooms. For Jews, Israel became a symbol of survival and resilience, a testament to their enduring faith. These parallel narratives are a stark reminder of how history can divide people who share the same land, yet live in entirely different worlds. As the dust settled, new tensions emerged. The 1948 victory for Israel set the stage for future battles, especially as surrounding Arab nations rejected its existence. The conflict entered a new phase in 1967, one that reshaped the region in profound and lasting ways. The Six-Day War of 1967 was a flashpoint that transformed the Israel-Palestine conflict, altering the region's dynamics in just under a week. Israel's swift and decisive victory led to the occupation of key territories, the West Bank, Gaza Strip, East Jerusalem, and the Golan Heights. For Israelis, this was a moment of triumph, a confirmation of their strength and survival. For Palestinians and neighboring Arab nations, it was a bitter loss, deepening their sense of displacement. Imagine winning a high-stakes game, only to realize the prize itself triggers endless disputes. This territorial shift wasn't just about land, it reshaped identities and loyalties. East Jerusalem, in particular, became a focal point, as it houses some of the holiest sites in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. The Western Wall, Al-Aqsa Mosque, and Church of the Holy Sepulchre stand as symbols of faith and contention. It's like living in a shared house where every room has sentimental value, and no one agrees on how to divide it. For Palestinians, the Israeli occupation of the West Bank and Gaza meant the beginning of a life under military control. Checkpoints, restrictions, and the loss of autonomy became part of their daily lives. It's not just a matter of history books, it's the lived reality of families navigating borders that once didn't exist. Meanwhile, for Israel, these territories were seen as a buffer zone for security, a strategic necessity in a hostile region. The war also reshaped international involvement. The United States and Soviet Union, locked in their own Cold War, saw the Middle East as a proxy battleground for their ideologies. Global powers took sides, pouring resources into the conflict and further complicating the path to peace. It's as if a local dispute grew into a global chess match, with no endgame in sight. While the Six-Day War answered some questions, it raised even more. The spiritual and emotional weight of the land became even heavier, drawing attention to the divine and prophetic dimensions of the conflict. What role does faith play in a fight so deeply rooted in sacred traditions? That's a question worth exploring next. At its core, the Israel-Palestine conflict isn't just about politics or land, it's deeply entwined with spiritual beliefs and divine purposes. For many, this struggle transcends the tangible, touching on biblical prophecies and apocalyptic visions. The land itself holds a sacred aura, seen as a cornerstone of God's plans for humanity. It's like watching a play unfold where every act feels predestined, and every character believes they're the protagonist. To the Jewish people, the return to Israel is a fulfillment of promises made by God through prophets like Ezekiel and Isaiah. The land is more than soil, it's a divine inheritance. For Christians, many see the events in Israel as part of God's end-time blueprint, with Jerusalem playing a central role. On the other side, Muslims view Palestine as a holy land tied to their own spiritual history, with Al-Aqsa Mosque as a symbol of their faith. It's a spiritual triad, each perspective amplifying the conflict's intensity. This spiritual lens doesn't just shape opinions, it drives actions. Think about the countless pilgrimages, prayers, and even protests rooted in faith. For some, supporting their side feels like aligning with God's will, making compromise nearly impossible. It's like trying to convince someone to alter a sacred ritual, the stakes feel too high to waver. Interestingly, this divine narrative extends beyond the region itself. Believers worldwide see the conflict as a signal, a prophetic chapter unfolding in real time. In Christian eschatology, events in Israel often fuel interpretations of the Book of Revelation. Similarly, Islamic teachings about the end times place great significance on Palestine. It's as if the land has become a stage where spiritual and earthly realms collide. With faith guiding so much of this story, it's no wonder the conflict feels perpetual. But how does one reconcile deeply held beliefs with the practicalities of peace? Perhaps understanding these spiritual dimensions is the first step. And yet, this exploration invites even deeper questions about destiny, faith, and the paths we choose to follow. Now that we've journeyed through the layers of the Israel-Palestine conflict, it's time to reflect. What does this mean for you, for your beliefs, and for how you see the world? History is more than just facts, it's lessons waiting to be applied. So, ask yourself, what steps are you taking to deepen your understanding? What role can you play in bridging the divides, whether in your community or within your own heart? The knowledge we've uncovered here isn't just about nations, it's about people, faith, and purpose. If this resonates with you, there's so much more to explore. That's why I've created Christian Journey, Exploring the Bible in the 27 Steps, a powerful resource designed to take you deeper. It's packed with practical strategies and spiritual insights you won't find anywhere else. The link is pinned in the comments. If this journey has sparked curiosity, don't miss the chance to transform knowledge into action. And before you go, let me invite you to take a step that costs nothing but means everything. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. Together, we'll uncover more biblical truths and stories that not only educate but inspire. Thank you for joining me on this exploration. Now, let's continue growing, learning, and living with purpose. See you in the next video.